What's going on, everybody? This is Chris K with the Burning the Red Shirt podcast, back again for a little mid-April football discussion. This time, I can say football because I think we're going to speak to the NFL draft here a little bit today. I have Andrew with me, who I think is leading the charge in the desire to talk NFL draft. So I will always talk NFL draft to a certain extent, right? So Andrew, what's up, man? Why you itching for the draft?
Well, part of I feel like the mantra, generally speaking, with in the CFF space, and that I personally look to embody, is the idea that you shouldn't feel like you ever need to ask permission to do anything. You don't need to appeal to authority. You don't need to do anything incrementally to prove yourself to do what you want to do in that space. You just go out and kind of take it. And not saying that you shouldn't put in the time and the effort to work to actually prepare and not just spew garbage out there. But I feel like that's kind of where I stand on things. So even though I definitely respect a lot of and consume so much in the way of information through all sorts of mediums and different individuals' content that they're putting out there about the NFL draft, I'm happy to I really have nothing else to talk about at this point because I've been losing sleep and just grinding myself to dust trying to make money off the NFL draft over the past month. So you thought about running back the quarterback discussion with CFF that it feels like we have a couple times a month in the offseason because there's nothing else to talk about. But I don't know. This is kind of just where I'm at from a headspace perspective right now. Fortunately, we've only got 8 days to go. It's the whole kind of catch-22 akin to the college football season where it's like, all right, let's go, let's do this. And then once the season starts, after a few weeks, it's like, I haven't slept since mid-August, and I can't wait for the season to end so I can actually get my life back. That's where I'm at right now with NFL draft content.
So you're grinding actual prop bets, right? Like that's
your thing.
You love doing that. You're like my buddy Amico.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, he's the godfather of the space, right? And this is, I think, my third year kind of doing it in some capacity. The first year, what was it? It would be 2021. I basically just tailed him, did nothing else, tailed him like one or two other people and netted out fine. Last year, I definitely still tailed him and a few other people, but started to mix in some of my own ideas. And this year, I'm like, there's not that much to tail. Like, there's in the sense that most people that are putting out plays out outside of what they're doing in a podcast or some sort of thing where they're looking to drive engagement toward with purposeful intent. Outside of that, there's not that much in the way of bets that you can tail that have any sort of shelf life to them because everything moves so quickly. And I'm cheap, so I'm never going to pay for anything like to subscribe to anyone anyway. But yeah, I've been doing most of my own stuff, like just trying to consume information, process information, and act on that information. And I don't know. It's in some ways it's very closely akin to college fantasy in the sense that like it's so much information driven. You listen to any NFL draft betting podcast, the first thing you hear is how it's an information market and how different it is than like betting on a game or something like that. And it's so true, but it's like even in comparison to CFF, which I think one of the reasons I love so much is it's so information driven. You get in what you put out from a grinding perspective. This is like going light speed versus just kind of driving a car in terms of the amount of time that you have to ingest that information, process it, and act on it. So not exactly something that equates to good life balance, but do what you got to do to try and print that dough.
Yeah, this is if you want to talk about like CFB lines and props and stuff during the season moving fast, like these prop lines for draft stuff go crazy quick. And I I don't have any issue with people not talking about what they're betting on Twitter until maybe after the fact, a decent bit, because like it just, the lines move so much. Then you get limited. It just becomes this crazy whirlwind of like you lose all your edge, all your profit, So I totally don't blame anybody for doing that.
Totally.
It's almost like you have to, if you are seeing stuff online, you have to, let's say the odds were 30-1, you almost have to be cool with 22-1, like, and because otherwise that's like the only thing you're going to get. Those things move so fast. Is there one in particular recently, one bet maybe that you've made recently that's really jazzed you up, that's kept you up at night for good reasons?
So I definitely have some positions that will make or break me on draft night. I got greedy. I was all set with like number one draft stuff. Like I boxed my position on all 4 quarterbacks early on and had locked in profit. But then I went back and reached my hands into the cookie jar for more Stroud, and I got caught, and I'm totally fucked. And now I was quick to get ahead of his fall down the top 10, and I got a lot of long shot positions on him in the top 10. The only one that I don't have anything on right now is number 4, which seems like that might be where he goes. But also, if he falls outside the top 10, I'm totally fucked. So that could be a little sketchy on draft night. What do you have a feel on what's going to happen with him? I feel like we're going to see some racist NFL shit where it's going to be like Justin Fields, and he's going to end up going like 12 or 13, and I'm just going to get totally I'm just going to light money on fire.
I feel like top 10 is like a near lock for Stroud, because there are so many teams. Like, I think the Lions have an opportunity to take a quarterback and sit him for a year or two, whatever, right? Like Goff's not extended. He's got 2 years total left. So, and I think he's got like only 1 year of what would be dead money. But I think there's enough teams out there that would think long term and be down with it. Like the Falcons, the Lions, the Raiders, like all these teams either need it now or would be cool with it and have the draft capital to just use a top 10 pick on, like, if it's a guy they love, so I think you're fine.
The Lions would be so amazing. Like, can you imagine? Like, it feels like it's an incredible match. I'm so small time relative to most people in terms of what they're betting. Like, I do, like, when I take long shots, I'm literally just throwing a few bucks down, and I never. One of my problems for just gambling, generally speaking, is I'm a fucking pussy when it comes to like actually betting real unit size. Like a unit's supposed to be like 100th of your bankroll, but like that amount of money, throwing that down on a single bet outside of when I'm tilting or just absolutely feeling like I'm ahead of the game, like just throwing a unit down on like something where I'm maybe 55% confident or whatever. I don't know. I'm like, I'm cheap, and so I don't know. So that's what, like, I feel like I haven't scaled up as quickly as I could have because of that. So, but I'm literally when I'm taking long, I have like 160 bets right now, and one of them is I have Stroud at the number 6 pick, presumably the Lions, for $3 at 100-1. You think maybe I could have put $10 or $20 on that? You'd be wrong, because
$3 is an interesting number. I don't know how you like. Did you say to yourself,
well,
$3 I can waste, but
I was thinking about it through the lens of like what I could return more so than what I was wagering.
Gotcha.
And I was like, well, I'm in the hole for like a little over 100 when I got caught reaching into the cookie jar on Stroud.
So you're trying to like win it back. Like, what's the number that would win it back?
I'm chasing exactly. But
what's the based on? It sounds like you've spread your bets out, which makes a lot of sense to do with many different players, right? Because there are like about 1,000 different things that could happen. I think especially since people have zero feel for what Houston's going to do at number 2. It's like someone was mentioning this morning, like, could you imagine if Houston just like lost the games they were supposed to? Like how easy the top 10 could have been. But I guess what is the Cats top 10? It doesn't have to be the specific like ones, but give me the top 10 in terms of maybe there's 6 guys you really feel good about at 1, 2, 4, 7, 8, 9, etc. Like which ones are you really feeling good about?
Can we make it more selfish and make it based on what would drive profit for me?
Well, I would imagine that you're aligning those two, right?
Now, so this is one of the things. So us degenerates have been putting bets down on the NFL draft since January. So there's so many information 180, so many sizing changes that when you open a position in January, that doesn't necessarily reflect at all like what the landscape looks like presently. Even a week ago, things changed so much, and they will continue to do so. So many of my bets also are just like arbing in and out, and like I take like the building a portfolio approach of like minimizing risk largely and trying to like box positions and stuff like that. But this point, like
let's do the selfish top 10 for Cat, and I'll tell you why you'll be eating ice water soup next week.
I mean, Stroud going 1 would be nice. I don't need it though. If Bryce goes 1, I'd be in a good place with either. I'd be fine with Stroud going 2, but also I have Tyree Wilson and Levis paired with Bryce going number 1 as long shots. So either of those 3 would be fine with me. Will Anderson going 2 is not optimal. Neither is Anthony Richardson. Feel like I'm forgetting. No, yeah, I guess that kind of covers the board. So that's how I feel about that. I guess the thing is Will Anderson has to go somewhere, and I have like nothing on him at this point. I got in at some points on different things with him, but ended up just arbing out.
It feels like Anderson's going to go 3rd to Arizona. Well, 2 to Houston if they say screw it, we don't want to do quarterback. We'll wait at 12, or do something like that. I think the most realistic is they go 3 or 6. I think they go to either Arizona or maybe you almost kind of want that trade up, someone trading up to 3 to get the quarterback to push him down, which I think
I would like him to go 3. I think because there's things that I want to have happen a little later on, and I don't want him ruining those situations. So let's just put him at 3, and then I have a decent position. This is one of my favorite things to do, where there's like a discrepancy between, those draft position bets. So you're not super familiar with this shit because you live in Georgia and you can't actually bet on draft. So you don't know.
I mean, I follow enough stuff to understand like what you're talking about.
Okay, so you can bet the over-unders, and there's discrepancies sometimes on different books. And basically I created, and it looked a little better when I was doing it, but I've created the equivalent of like an 8-1 on Anthony Richardson to go 4th by taking him over the 3.5 on one book and under 4.5 on another at like minimal juice, and created my own.
You made a window. You created a window.
Exactly. Yeah. So him going 4th, which doesn't seem likely now, just based on like the Colts owning that pick and them supposedly loving Levis and shit. But
who knows
what happens?
They've never drafted a black quarterback.
Is that true?
That's dead true. Yeah, but I mean,
they hired the Hurts whisperer though.
They love like a really like a 3-year white Big Ten starter in the 6th round.
Right.
If they went to Wisconsin, it's 50-50 that they're going to get taken in the 6th round by him. But yeah, so I don't know. I think there's a shot AR goes 4. Yeah. I mean, it's not like, I don't think it's super likely. I think everybody just presumes that that Levis is the guy, but I wouldn't think it's out of this world to think that AR doesn't go 4.
We could see trading between like 2, 3, 4 and teams down the draft board too. So
and you have him at 4, not the Colts taking him, correct?
What's that?
So you have him at 4, not at 4.
Yeah.
So there is that outside chance at a. Right. I think we could see a lot of trades. I mean, if the Colts are in a pretty good position, if they like Levis and Richardson, they could move back a guy or two.
Definitely. Some of the content that I'm consuming, right, is like people expressly creating like written material and podcasts talking about the NFL draft. Like all the established to run podcasts are amazing. Like, dude, they had Lance Zierlein on yesterday. Did you listen to this? And Evan Silva and Adam Leviton are just grilling him about draft betting stuff, but trying to kind of phrase it in ways that are like not so direct that it's like, tell us all your gambling secrets type shit. But that was awesome. Every time they put something out, I immediately listen to it. The 4-for-4 move the line is great. Some of them feel like real homework though. Like those two are both actually enjoyable, but then you listen to like the fucking athletic football podcast with Dane Brugler or like Daniel Jeremiah's podcast. And it's like, all right, you're talking about like scouting shit that I couldn't care less about. It's like, shut the fuck up and tell me where these guys are going to go. But you still got to do that. And then there's like there's like team beat writers and stuff that kind of go above and beyond to actually think about draft related stuff. And the one Seahawks guy seems really awesome, Rob Stratton. Like he puts out mocks and thinks really like theoretically and kind of conceptually about stuff. And so I don't have that much to say about and down on like the Seahawks and what they're going to do at 5 outside of like that guy is super into the idea that they're not taking Jalen Carter under any scenario. And his argument is so compelling and convincing that I'm like, the way I've gotten involved with that pick is kind of just assuming that he's right and Jalen Carter will fall down. So I have positions on Carter to go to the Bears and the Eagles and to go 9 and 10 based on the idea that, okay, for a while, at least Jalen Carter was very commonly mocked to go to the Seahawks, but for better, it might totally fuck me. Like the Jets beat writer was totally convinced last year that they weren't taking Sauce, and I fell for that shit. But I don't know. I'll buy into this. I would love to see Will Levis fall. If he's not going to, we can slot him at 5 and get him out of the way, though, just so he doesn't fuck up anything else. What do you think about your Lions at 6?
Well, I think we have no cornerbacks under contract after this next year. So I think cornerbacks. I think if Will Anderson falls to him, they might run to the podium. But then I think it's Witherspoon or Gonzalez. And then, if AR is there, then I could consider. It really just depends on how much Holmes loves, and so does Campbell, loves Goff. But it's at a certain point he's going to just make a ton of money. And, they won't have Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator. So it's all right, so what is our direction after Johnson leaves? So I don't know. I would put all my money on defensive line like Anderson. I don't think we go Carter.
I was going to ask you about that.
If he was not necessarily what people are saying he is, then he would be a surefire lock.
Isn't it the same thing as with last year, how there was a debate if the Lions were going to go Hutchinson or Thibodeau, and it was like Thibodeau just doesn't fit with the
I think people created these culture issues with Thibodeau that probably weren't all that true. Like the guy is outspoken and he says stuff he's come out on Twitter and said dumb stuff, but if we all had an opinion and voice that loud, wouldn't be the craziest thing. He hasn't done anything super stupid, but I think Aiden was just such a lock. Their reaction when they got Aiden was about as good as it gets. It just was fair. With him being Michigan based, it made way too much sense. But I think Carter would be a great fit if they aren't afraid of the off field stuff. They've talked to him apparently a bunch, and I think there's there's a quote out there from Campbell that basically says we talked to one of his teammates and learned a lot, but they didn't really say what he learned, obviously, right? So and I think everybody's trying to put all this stuff together, and it's they talked to Nolan Smith, the pass rusher, right?
Yeah.
And Nolan Smith, if you've ever heard him talk, he's a great listen. The guy is a great interview. It seems like a really good guy, good kid. So it's just kind of funny. I would imagine he's not going to say anything bad about Carter. So I don't know. I think ultimately we go Anderson immediately if he's there, and then otherwise we just go cornerback. Long story short.
Good. Funny you brought up Nolan Smith. So the position that it won't I don't know if I want to get more involved. It's probably already my biggest position is Nolan Smith going in the top 10. I'm convinced, but I'm blinded by being an UGA obsessed fan as well. But I am pretty convinced he's going top 10. Hearing the Seahawks guy talk about what they're looking for and what worked for them last time, D-line is one of the things that they need, right? And the Seahawks guy was talking about how they basically did a seismic shift in taking character risks, and then last year went high character, and it just worked out amazingly. And the first thing you hear about Nolan Smith you hear lots of things. Number 1 overall recruit, insane combine, right? Production kind of explained by the realities associated with just Georgia playing a zillion different guys because they have all the talent in the world. And then just another coach in the room and absurdly amazing character. I keep looking all over the place for Nolan Smith to go number 5. You can get him top 5 to go to at 25-1. But I think 7, 8, 10, all that stuff's possible. I have a little bit on him to go 8, and he's like co-favorite with Bijan right now. I think I have him penciled in at 7 for like the selfish mock because Christian Gonzalez I have going 8 because I created the same thing I did with AR with him where I arbed out, but I kind of created like a free
essentially like a free roll. You're gonna automatically
I'm free rolling a couple units on him to go number 8 basically.
I think Nolan Smith at 8 to the Falcons makes a ton of sense. The Falcons, like as bad as I think, like they're not a good team in my opinion, and I hear so much about them because of my friends, but like they don't have a ton of like immediate needs. Like even Bijan is not really an immediate need. That's more of just like a great talent mixed with it can't hurt to have a guy that's better than Algier in the room. But Algier's like was very solid for them, so it's not like they have to go running back. But yeah, I think corner makes sense to the Falcons, but I think Smith has really picked up steam there.
Yeah, and I didn't even mention the local ties as well. Like I feel it's not a direct conflict between like draft people. I think in terms of is it Bijan is it Nolan, but it's like two schools of thought. A lot of people are thinking that Bijan could go to the Falcons, and like sure, but I saw one data point that the Falcons GM has like never drafted an early running back ever. Like when he was with the Saints or whatever, like he drafted Kamara and that in like at like pick 67, and that's the earliest he's ever taken a running back. So yeah, Arthur Smith might be a big baby, Stone Age baby, and like to run the ball and shit, right? But like that doesn't mean he's getting Bijan.
Yeah, there's that thought that like Arthur Smith's the coach, right? Arthur Blank's the owner. Smith, that maybe he pushes the need and want for a running back because of Derrick Henry. But who knows? I mean, Derrick Henry is not really someone that's comparable to anybody ever in the NFL draft. So
yeah. And then 9 and 10, I would like to see Jalen go either 9 or 10. Both seem super possible just based on kind of how he's falling, but probably not falling too far. And you got to put Tyree Wilson somewhere, presumably, right? So we can put him in the other spot. And that would work very nicely for me from a top 10 perspective.
What are the chances of that actually happening? Like 5%? I mean,
probably not.
Not even 1% probably, but I think that's just how the draft goes.
Yeah.
From a Jets perspective, because you are a Jets fan, what do you what pick do they have? What is it like?
13.
What do you want them to do?
So first of all, what I want them to do is to continue to play hardball with the Packers on the Aaron Rodgers stuff, presuming that let's just presume there's no turning back, there's no backing out, it's getting done at some point. I don't care if, well, let's not frame it that way. It wouldn't matter. Like, I wouldn't care if it falls through. There's a school of thought that Packers fans have created that Jets fans will be upset if the deal falls through, and as a result, the GM can't go walk back to the fan base
at some point.
I don't care. We suck. We're the Jets. Like, big deal. Like, I'd rather just kind of figure things out and take a Bayesian approach with respect to things going forward than unnecessarily pay the Packers. So if it's me, I'm saying take a 6th round pick or leave it. From the perspective of the Packers can't keep him on their roster. Like, the financially, it just doesn't work. They can't, like, I haven't looked into it as much as some people, but my understanding is basically they just can't pay. They can't pay him. It's like a $60 million cap hit. They can't fucking do it. It's a fucking ticking time bomb. So that's number one for me. Don't give up anything for Rodgers. They should probably be paying us to take him if we're being serious. Number 2, I mean, you look at the market for like their first pick, the ideas, or they're like minus 250 or maybe even a bigger favorite to take a tackle. I'm always cool with doing stuff on the offensive line. Like, I subscribe to that thought. You can never have too many offensive linemen that are good. So I'm fine with it. It seems like there's 3 to 4 to 5 that are maybe not elite, but really strong. So I'm not going to pretend I know anything about who's good and who's not. Broderick Jones, Uggaman gets mocked there all the time. So that sounds good to me.
Yeah, there's a couple. My absolute favorite tackle, the Tennessee guy, Darnell Wright, who is actually I think people like him in consideration for like the 18th pick for the Lions. I will always be a fan favorite of his after he DM'd the guy and called him a dick eater, and then apologized by saying maybe I was a little too heavy on the dick eater. Just a classic apology. So he's got a fan for life here.
That's great. I didn't know about that.
It's funny in my circle of friends that text about this type of stuff all day, every day. We're all fans of like not going running back anywhere early, but I do think Bijan, to kind of rope this into what people actually care about on this, that listen to this podcast, skill players in college. I think Bijan at 18 would make a ton of sense for the Lions. When you have 2 picks, you can go maybe more directly with what a need is for a team that should be a contender to win the division, let's say. But like when you have the second pick, you can kind of utilize that for something like kind of like a fun pick. Because I think DeAndre Swift he's going to be gone after this year. Yeah. And then you do go back to like the 2 running back system of like Montgomery and Bijan. But speaking of Swift, we're treading in weird water right now. But DeAndre Swift was your guy, a Georgia guy, right? Was supposed to be a stud. I love him. He just seems to never be healthy, never know how to hit a hole. Are you a fan of him? Like, do you think like from an NFL, you play fantasy NFL, you do keeper dynasty stuff. Like, what's your outlook on Swift? Because he's going to be gone after Detroit after this year, which should be a good thing for him.
Dude, this is the same. It's the same. It's been the same story with him since he was at UGA. Like, and dumb injuries and like never. You see the flashes. He's got amazing moves. He's always had that fucking sick stanky leg move. He's got electric speed, but it's never gonna happen from game 1 to game 17. It's always gonna be dumb shit popping up. Admittedly, like that was my outlook on him coming out of college and into the pros. And I did fade him in Dynasty, where I just laid money on fire in NFL Dynasty, but it's fun and it's not that much money. So it's like a good offseason thing more than anything else. But I've fallen for the trap that is DeAndre Swift, unfortunately, a couple times since an NFL season long, but it's just never going to happen. Maybe it all clicks one year, but like this is who he is. This is who he's always been at going back to UGA and his entire career in the NFL.
If you had to pick one of the 4 quarterbacks, which one of the top 4, or I guess 5 if you want to throw a hooker in there, which one do you think is like the best, most likely to be successful?
Tough. I feel so my brain has been broken by the whole like NFL draft process. I feel like I was totally clairvoyant throughout the progression of the CFP season, right? From the perspective of just like thinking about things through the lens of CFB, but now like I'm just the mass media of the NFL draft machine has corrupted, has just broken my brain in so many ways. I totally out on Levis. I think I'm out on Richardson too. And so my initial take on Stroud, I feel like when I watched him for a while, and you still see it pop up sometimes, but it's like the people who say it are such douchebags that I feel bad aligning myself with them. But he throws the ball like Mason Rudolph, where he does that palm thing, and it's like, how is that shit actually going to work in the NFL? So I don't know. I think I'm probably out on him as well. Is it weird to say that I felt better about Bryce this past season in terms of his performance than I did the previous one at Alabama? I felt like the previous season, when they lost, he let the team down. And this past year, it felt like they were winning solely because of him.
Yeah, those weapons around him this past year were supposed to be awesome, right? Between like Burton and Brooks and JoJo Earl, like all these guys that were supposed to be just fill right in, and they didn't. I mean, that Kansas State game, I was thinking about it. I was talking to somebody this morning about it. That Kansas State game was like incredible. That bowl game, I mean, he was just lighting up Kansas State's defense, which was very solid, with like 30 to 60-yard bombs the entire time. Every single time, albeit, Brooks and Burton were open a bunch, but like, I mean, he put it on a dime.
I've made a mental note to myself for a going forward perspective relative to that game, from like a prop betting perspective and maybe other angles as well, that no one from Alabama opted out of that game. And while like so many lines are set at the team, at the player level going into bowl season, with ambiguity about who's going to play and who's not, I think that we should go into Alabama games, assuming they're not in the playoff, a rarity, that we should go into their bowl games as long as Saban's there, assuming that everyone's going to play, and bet accordingly.
I'm sure there's someone out there that could tell us who exactly has opted out, but it does feel like in the past for Alabama, but it does feel like they more often than not.
It's crazy that no one opted out.
Although Will Anderson like barely played. Like he played, but he like, I think if you were to go back, I think you would see that he played like only on like pass rushing downs or something, right? Like, really? So, but I was fooled. I thought for sure that Young would not play a full game.
Gibbs too.
I was like, I mean, Gibbs rated as like this insane play, even with me projecting him at like limited usage, and I was like, nope, I'm not getting Tylan Wallace. I'm not getting Tylan. So that turned into a mess, but a salvage. But yeah, I mean, that was such an impressive performance, and maybe Saban is just like a master motivator and getting people to stay, and just maybe them understanding how like that game. I mean, like, was there a take pre that game and then obviously post that game of who was going to go one in terms of quarterback? I mean, because Stroud played and he was incredible too in his bowl game.
Bryce was a pretty big favorite for most of draft season until the Panthers acquired the number 1 pick. And then it flipped to Stroud with the idea that some dot connecting of Frank Reich as coach. He only coaches tall guys. Some stuff that in hindsight looks perhaps we were a little too conspiratorial about. But yeah. So, and that Stroud was the favorite for up until about 10 days ago. And then it flipped to Bryce, and there's been like it's only continued to get to the point now where Bryce is like a 95% favorite. I'm not adding any more Stroud at number 1, but I don't think because I'm cheap and risk averse. But I'm not totally bought in that it's 100% Bryce yet. Just based on like either like it's so much of the shit about that has led to the idea that it's definitively Bryce. It's just conjecturing as opposed to so one of two things has either happened, right? Either information was leaked and has it been leaked to the point where we actually know definitively that was leaked, or it's just people in the media are creating snowballs of ideas, right? And it's just compounding. But getting back to your original question, I would go Bryce. I think that amongst the 4 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think I would go Bryce too. And then I think it's funny. Any college fan is pretty much guaranteed to say like, I'm out on Levis.
Yeah.
The upside doesn't warrant the amount of risk you take, I think, for him. Whereas like with Richardson, like I don't think, I was telling an old buddy this the other day, like I don't think Richardson ends up being good, but like his upside is so incredible. And like the chance to get there is better than Levis, that I can understand why teams do it. I was telling a couple of DFS buddies, like, dude, Richardson's 75-1 to go first. Like, you should take that. Like, why not just throw something on that? This was back in like December, maybe.
Yeah.
And they just laughed at me. And I'm like, no, dude, like the NFL draft is crazy. Like, people will just do stuff based on what somebody looks like in spandex. I'm telling you, like, he is going to go first round 100, and then like, and this bet was for first overall. So like, I mean, it's kind of like a weird situation where like, I feel like I was right because he's going to go maybe top 6 or 10, but
It's still a great
I wouldn't have won any money. So,
yeah.
Any final draft takes? Any thoughts?
No,
I'm motivating you because otherwise we have to talk about quarterbacks in college.
that I think that exhausts. It got out. I need to talk some draft from like a first party perspective instead of just hearing and consuming so much. So this scratched that itch for me.
Perfect. So something you did in the most recent Champion Series best ball draft is draft Dante Moore, the quarterback from UCLA, the freshman, who I think pretty much anybody that's like watched a ton of high school stuff and like does that whole freshman stuff believes Dante Moore is going to be awesome in that like almost same realm of Nico and Arch Manning. But do you think he wins the job then? I mean, you took him not early, but in the 22nd or 23rd round. Like, what was your thought process behind taking him? And Schlee, I don't think was taken, nor was Ethan Garbers.
I need to do more research, but a couple articles I was trying to dig up some stuff to find out exactly how bad it's going for Schlee, and it seems to be at the point just based on the couple of articles I was looking at, like his name's not even getting mentioned anymore. Like amongst the quarterbacks, like the one thing I saw was Ethan Garbers. That's his name, right? There's so many fucking people in that quarterback room, but Garbers was taking number one snaps, which makes sense, right? Incumbent, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think it was Moore and Justin Martin splitting with the twos, and there was no mention of Schlee. Well, I was like, well, if it's Moore against Martin, I'll take Moore, and I don't believe in Garbers. So maybe not on day one, but like I feel like that job is Moore's sooner than later. If we're just thinking about things through that lens, how do you think it plays out?
I think it plays out one of two ways. Nobody is worth picking, or Colin Schlee is awesome, like top 35 quarterback. Like I just don't see a world where Dante Moore comes in any way and is valuable his true freshman year. Like there's just too many things. You know, there's a lot of people that do like the whole G5 to P5, and you can like talk about the struggles. This kid is a high schooler in like true freshman year. I just can't expect him to do anything. So in my head, I'm saying Schlee wins the job and it's valuable. Garber wins the job. It could be valuable, but it's not likely. Or Dante Moore wins the job and UCLA wins 6 games. You know, and I don't want any of those guys because he's just not great.
I'm help me workshop this take and tell me if it's I don't know. I doubt I'll be able to articulate it in any sort of meaningful way. But I think the idea of fading true freshman quarterbacks at the macro makes a ton of sense. It's just like when you're trying to think about overarching strategy across the entire player pool, and just think about how you want to shape your team or your teams, your portfolio of teams, et cetera. It's a sound strategy. And it's one that I advocate for as well. But the idea of when I'm now trying to dissect an individual room and just a cluster of players and trying to apply that to this very micro individualized instance, the idea of applying a macro trend to that micro level blanketly without giving consideration to the individual variables that are at play here and how I think they're likely to play out. I feel like those two things are at odds with one another, and I don't like the idea of just making decisions about one particular instance based on an overarching generalized trend.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from, but the counterpoint would be like we're all kind of playing percentages based on a lot of these different things, right? Like what's the likelihood of X happening? And I mean, I can't even tell you the last time a true freshman in the P5 conference was successful, right? Like, can you?
Rosen.
Let me look up Josh Rosen's stats that first year, and let's see. I mean, he was actually UCLA as well, so this will be interesting.
Dude, yeah, I mean, Jim Mora was the coach, and there's been a couple since then, I feel like. But yeah, that first game against Virginia on Labor Day weekend was incredible. And I feel like he dealt with injuries, but and
I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, he
yeah,
was pretty good for a freshman. But he doesn't have any rushing stuff, so it's a hard comparison, right? Because
yeah,
Dante Moore has rushing upside, but he threw for 3,600 and 23 touchdowns, and it looks like he played the full season, essentially. So, I mean, is it possible? Yeah, but I
and
mean, at
then
that point, then you would have to be thinking that Dante Moore is that kind of like next level, like a guy you would really consider is going to be like a really solid NFL draft potential superstar, right? Like
yeah,
if you think he's going to defy the odds like that in a real conference, then if you're doing anything NFL based, you should also invest stock there as well.
I love Colin Schley. I'm sketched out by the way that this is playing out. I wonder if he transfers again.
I wonder if it's possible. He's like fairly old. Like he's been in college a while. I will tell you something that's going to make you feel better about Colin Schley. Do you know who his roommate is?
Oh, is it Carson Steele?
It's Carson Steele. That's a good omen, right? That's a good sign.
But I'm on the TJ Harden bandwagon at
Dude, TJ
UCLA.
Harden's not going to do anything.
Dude, me and your boy Clint are two peas in a pod. We're both on
Harden.
Yeah,
he's like he's pretty versatile. Or am I thinking somebody else on UCLA's roster?
I
Like
mean, we
he
haven't
had
seen
some
a ton.
big
No,
games.
are you thinking of that dude Casimir Allen? Who,
I think I am.
Who's no longer there. I think Harden can get it done. You're
telling me that a Ball State transfer can't be successful in the Pac-12?
Yeah, I mean it's not a bad bet, right? Just from a like when you're getting into those 20 rounds, even though like we pushed Harden up now by just competing with one another to get him. But yeah, it's a Chip Kelly offense. It's gonna be fun. We're all just trying to identify who's the QB and the RB and the WR1.
Yeah. Do you have a gut feeling on who the receiver one is at UCLA?
I would say it's got to be Zach's boy Sturdivant, right? But Kyle Ford is there as well.
I kind of like Kyle Ford as like a late option. There's a bunch of receivers that I realize have not been taken in the first 3 drafts that I thought were super intriguing. I want to hear your thoughts here in a second. But yeah, I think Sturdivant's probably the favorite, but like Kyle Ford at like a super cheap rate, like he's a big dude. Obviously talented. He went to USC, so he's got some stars behind him. So you never know. All it takes is like one random, like good chemistry, and all of a sudden,
yeah,
they throw it to him a lot. That receiver one is very profitable. Receiver 2, not so much, unless there's just like no clear cut guy. So receivers that have been not drafted so far. If I told you that Kobe Hudson and Javon Baker were not drafted in any of the first 3 drafts for the Champion Series, would that surprise you?
So I've looked at both of them at various parts of the offseason because my memory from playing so much DFS this past year is that they were blowing up all over the place. And I think, like, after looking back at the stat lines, I think what actually happened was between Hudson, Baker, and O'Keefe, like one of them would blow up every game guaranteed. It wouldn't so JRP would just make one receiver absolutely eat across their 12 or 13 games, but each of them it was only like 3 or 4 games, right? So then you look at the composite stats and it's like, all right, 800 900 yards, 6 touchdowns. So that's made me kind of take a step back and just question it from a do I want to invest in this? Regardless, compared to some of the receivers I've taken, they're like maybe I should be leaning toward them as like, okay, they're going to get theirs. It may not be incredible from a ceiling perspective, but wide receiver 7, 8, 9, why not?
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate take because what's really interesting, looking at those 3 top guys, they went 640 yards to 800 yards and they combined for 17 touchdowns, pretty much spread out. Hudson so Kobe Hudson didn't do anything the first 2 games. I can't remember if he was hurt or suspended
I
or
think
whatever.
he was,
And he did nothing, and he still ended with essentially 40 catches for 600 yards and 7 touchdowns. So he's the guy I'm going to start targeting, and I took in this last draft. But I think ultimately I'm going to take one of them every draft. I mean, in the 28th round, why wouldn't you? Is my thought. Like, if I can get 5 or 6 good weeks out of them,
yeah.
And even with JRP out, they still had some production. So it's not like they're super tied to JRP. Like Curtis Rourke at Ohio, like Sam Wiglis, his production's completely tied to Rourke's health. So I don't have to worry about that. And I say that because JRP is inevitably going to get hurt at least 4 times next season. So there is a connection where you got to think about something like that. But I think I'll ultimately take one in every draft because, I mean, even with like a 3-headed monster in a sense of that, how they spread out usage, all 3 of them had some pretty productive games, at least 4 to 6 of them last season.
Nugget from watching their bowl game where they played like trash against Duke was that they were stoked about Xavier Townsend to replace
I like him.
Yeah, to replace O'Keefe. And I went into the start of our best ball drafts thinking about how I wanted to target him and kind of just watched how it's played out. He hasn't gotten taken at all. And then I'm thinking about him like, how can I justify taking this dude who seems like he's kind of running with the 2s and the 1s? How can I take him over Hudson or Baker? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I just haven't pulled the trigger yet because it's like I don't know how to justify that.
It is hard to justify taking him over the other 2.
Yeah.
But they definitely, that offense loves that O'Keefe talent. And Townsend to me was after that game, I was like, he's 100% the guy they're going to like that was their full intention, is to do the whole O'Keefe thing. Like looking at his stats real quick, he had 7 catches for 25 yards and then 2 carries for 9 yards. So like, it was very intent on like what his purpose was on the field. So now I have another good receiver that I think has very high upside. And Dana Holgerson has made some very vague comments recently about that room that makes me feel pretty good about him. Sam Brown.
Yeah.
The Houston one, not the Rutgers one.
Right. I've gotten the Rutgers one at least once. And that like being Jersey, I enjoy that, right? I think he could be fun though if he's back to full health. It took forever, so not answering your question whatsoever, but it took forever to track down what the actual injury was with Sam Brown, the Rutgers guy. And so it was a foot injury because I was like, they ruled him out in mid-October. We never saw him again. I'm like, are we dealing with like a knee ligament type recovery thing where it's gonna get sketchy? And like foot injuries can be sketchy too, but I feel like that's a better outcome. And so I felt good drafting him in like the last round of one of our recent drafts because they were dead set on giving him like 20-25 carries as a true freshman the back half of the year. But anyway, getting back to your dude, the Houston guy. Yeah, hearing Holgerson's comments made me feel better about not being able to get Golden in any drafts, not because I wasn't necessarily trying, but just he was going so early and I was doing other things. They have other cool receivers too. They got the dude from...
Don't say it. There's nothing cool about a Wyoming receiver transfer.
I was going to say, didn't they get the Oklahoma State kid, Stephon Johnson?
Yes, they did get Stephon Johnson, yes.
Yeah, I like him. I think but I mean, I'm always a fan of all things Gundy, or most things Gundy. So there's bias there. And they have other dudes.
Joshua Cobbs was the Wyoming transfer who was like productive for a Wyoming receiver for sure.
Your boy Manjack is back.
Yeah, I don't know. Is he back?
I think
he got kicked off the team or something. Yeah, he fought a team. He fought Sam Brown, is who he fought on the sideline. I forgot about that. Yeah, he fought Sam Brown in September. What a transition. So my thoughts on Sam Brown are, and I forgot necessarily a little bit about this Stephon Johnson, of course, but Sam Brown was really good. In 7 games, he had like 40 catches and 450 yards, like 4 touchdowns. The comments essentially from Dana, and I could be doing this just injustice, so correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially it was like Matthew Golden looks great. We don't have a number one yet, but we have a lot of receivers that look awesome right now, essentially, right? Like
Yeah.
he acknowledged that Golden looked very good, but he didn't proclaim anyone to be a number one. Was how I took it, correct?
Yeah, that sounds about right. The Houston Chronicle is one of those newspapers where you can hit the X button before the paywall pops up. So you can always get your Houston takes from that dude, Joseph Duarte, if you're quick enough on the paywall.
Trigger.
Yeah. Have you gotten any Donovan Smith yet?
I have, yeah, a little bit.
I haven't had the pleasure. I'm always drafting QBs there, but I always forget to get them.
I like a lot of those guys. So I've got
they're
a
all
lot
great.
of JRP. There's just like this mix of dual threat, awesome quarterbacks that always go between rounds like 7 and 10. It's like Finn, JRP, Hornsby at the front end of it. Riley Leonard is in there. Donovan Smith. Like there's like 5 to 8 of those guys that are just incredible possible options. KJ Jefferson's in that group. So
yeah, I wanted to get Riley Leonard, but it just didn't happen. Like he goes pretty early in our drafts, and understandably, like he's cool, and they they use him, like he gets so many touches, right? He's like he'll run the ball like 10, 15 times and then throw it like 40. Like he's like, yeah, and then then there's scraps for the 3 running backs in their system. I ended up with 2 Duke receivers in this draft, which feels stupid. But I have
that doesn't feel great. I'm going to tell you that straight up.
How is Calhoun back for another year?
I don't know, man. But you took Samar Hagan as the other one?
No, I took Jordan Moore.
Jordan Moore. Well, he's kind of like a mix of everything, right? Like, doesn't he play like every position?
So
or is that a different guy?
I'm still a little confused about it. But there's 2 Jay Moores. The one is a running back, and I think that's Jacquez. And then Jordan Moore is the one that lost the QB competition to Riley Leonard. And I think what they initially did, they were like, you're talented, like, please don't transfer. We'll put you on the field and do cool shit. And they did that for a while. And then they were like, oh, wait a minute, you can actually like play receiver. Let's start getting you some targets. And then the third to last game of the season, he got 20 targets. And the second to last season, he got 13 targets and had huge games both times. So I'm hopeful. I mean, my school thought that like really I'm just retconning right now because it wasn't like planned out in any way, shape, or form. But the idea is if like they run a lot of plays, they throw the ball a lot. If they're gonna throw 45 times, hope those 2 guys are their best receivers. Between them, they combined for 20 targets a week, and hopefully one of them shows out, kind of like the UCF receivers, right?
Mm-hmm.
With more target volume, because JRP is not throwing you more than 15.
Yeah, my problem is it's just, I mean, dude, if you're gonna take the 2 guys, you have to take Riley Leonard, right? Like if you're gonna double stack them, you gotta take the quarterback. I stacked Bo Nix with Troy Franklin, and that was just more of a matter of like it was like a tiebreaker. There was a couple guys I was looking at, and ultimately I was like, well, I took Bo Nix, like I might as well just take Franklin. So I'm trying to diversify a little every draft. Like that way I don't go to like the final 2 drafts and just diversify every single pick. You know, like you've done 10 picks, and you're like 10 drafts, and you're like, man, I got Jaden Daniels in 9 of them. Like I need to take somebody else.
Do you have a player that through our first 4 drafts you've drafted in every draft?
I think I have 2, Jaden Daniels and Nussmeier. I have a sure proof plan. It is draft Jaden Daniels. I took him in the 15th round. Like that's blasphemy. If he was like the 100% starter, he would be QB 7 or 8 overall, in my opinion. So what I'm doing is I'm taking Daniels, and then I take Nussmeier in like the second to last round, because my thought is absolute worst case scenario. I have a QB 1, a top 15 quarterback, top 12 quarterback every single week, because if Daniels gets hurt, then Nussmeier can just fill right in. Absolute worst case scenario. Absolute best case scenario is Nussmeier transfers to Auburn or to somewhere cool because he lost the job. And now I have 2. I have a QB 1, and I have a probably a QB2 at the worst, unless he transfers to like somewhere stupid, like UNLV or something. So
Yeah.
that's my train of thought. I have those guys everywhere. What about you? Do you have a guy that you've had in all of them?
Two, I think. I've I keep like a color coded Google like a sheet in my like master fantasy spreadsheet that color coded by the different positions, a column for each team. And then I try and pivot and like create ownership stuff at the end of the draft season because I'm a nerd. Um, but but it's incomplete. It's very incomplete right now. Like basically when I'm like either like really gotta be really bored, I'll be like going and populate it with like, oh, I'm really happy I got that guy in that draft. Let me put his name in on team 4 right now. But so it's incomplete. But I think the two that I might have them on all 4 are Shader Sanders, Deion kid at Colorado. I don't understand why does he go so late in our drafts? Like I've gotten in between like 15 and 18 every single time.
Yeah, I've noticed you take him. I think it's just the matter of like nobody knows what the offense is. There's a ton of weapons, which is nice, and they all tend to be in like the receiving room, which is good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a lot of things going for him. I think the concern is he's coming from Jackson State, maybe, and there's just a lot of quarterbacks. Like, there's just a lot of good options to pick from, and he just
Yeah.
tends to be the one on the bottom end.
Yeah. But yeah, I agree. But I don't know. I thought I would have to pay more for him, and every draft, I'm not going out of my way to get him, and he's there. I'm like, all right, let's do this. Like, figure he's playing in the Sean Lewis Kent State offense. They're gonna run a zillion plays. Assuming Deion doesn't mind getting his son hurt, he's probably gonna run a good amount. You can assume he's athletic. He was super efficient playing at the FCS level too, right? Like you look at his stats from Jackson State, it's like insanely efficient from a passing perspective. Who knows how it stuff translates? The stuff that what I haven't pulled the trigger on like betting Colorado over wins yet. It's 4.5, I think, and like I think at plus money. But the opinion that I feel like I see most often about them from people who are down on them relates to the roster strength. And I think I just think it's so misguided to make assumptions about how their roster will look week 1 relative to how it stands right now with the portal. They're about to get a bunch more talent. You know it's going to happen. Like Deion has another window to go out and recruit insane guys and get the talent that he's already brought into mesh. Things will only improve for them, and for lots of other teams, things will get worse. So
the guys that leave Colorado are guys that we're not going to play, and they're going to only add good options. And I think he's created such a fun buzz that seems pretty legit that players will see it and be like, I'm hitting the portal and I'm strongly considering them. So I definitely agree that it's only going to get better for Colorado.
One of my best friends lives out in Colorado now. I think he's like kind of near Fort Collins, but he went on the college football trip last year to Uga, Tennessee with us. He's in our league. And he's like, dude, come out. Let's go to like Colorado game this year. I'm like, that sounds fucking amazing. Like, let's do that. Their stadium looks so cool too.
Yeah,
and
those schools out west like that, like especially the Mountain Time Zone, they just have such awesome like scenery, and they just look. They're not as big. They're not as big as the ones on the East Coast, but they look really cool for sure.
Yeah. Oh, and so Shadur is I don't know how to pronounce his name, but that's one. And I think my other guy that I've gotten in every draft, and in hindsight, like I'm drafting him way too early, is Jonah Pinoke on Hawaii. They're going back to the run and shoot, and he's going to be a starting slot back for them. Like I assume, like maybe the offense won't be perfect, but you think he's going to catch 6, 7, 8, 10 passes like that. All the targets funneled to those guys, and just generally speaking, I feel like when we hear run and shoot, we go directly to the slot back, and those guys get pushed up drafts a little more than where he's going. I thought he's always looked pretty good when he's gotten on the field. This past year, he had to kind of fight his way on initially. When he got on, he looked good. He got hurt, missed the time, came back, produced. The offense was atrocious, but I've seen enough, and now I think that the things are only improving in terms of the situation, in terms of his role.
Yeah, I'll say two things to that. One, the quarterback play, I think, is the concern for everybody.
Definitely.
But if Clay Millen can make Torrey Horton relevant, I don't even know if that's a real sentence. If Torrey Horton can be relevant with Clay Millen, there we go, at
Yeah.
quarterback, then why can't a similarly great offensive situation for Panoke, however you pronounce it, why can't he be successful to at least a certain extent, right? Because it's not like you're drafting him top 10 rounds, right? Like you're in the late teens or early 20s, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He felt like I was taking him around like 18, 19, 20, 21. And then this past draft, I look up and he's still chilling in like 27, 28. I was like, all right, let's fucking go.
I mean, at that point, dude, if you're taking a guy in the like, I didn't want to take Jaden Daniels. I was like, I need to diversify my quarterbacks here a little bit. Like, there's others I like that I don't feel like I'm conceding like value here. And then he was still there at 15, so I said, screw it. But like, I think when you're happy with a guy at 15 and he's there at the 23rd round or 28th round, like why wouldn't you take him? Just diversify a little bit differently the next time. But awesome. Well, hopefully people didn't get too upset about us talking about people that will never be relevant for CFF again, but excited to put this out to you guys. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll chat soon. See you guys.